You guys, it's almost my favorite holiday, Halloween. So we have to make some Halloween donuts. I know I've done some donut videos before, but I think these are going to be really cute and I wanted to show you how to decorate them for Halloween. So to make the donuts, we're going to use our foam clay. So you'll want to condition your clay. I'm going to make 6 different donuts. So I have a pretty good chunk of clay here. And then I'm just going to add some classic caramel just to give this a little bit of color. You could also use territorial beige. I don't want this to be really dark colored, but I want it to have a little bit of a base color. And then just mix that in really well. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is roll this out into a log. And this will just make it easy for me to get my donuts about the same size. So I'm just going to take my clay blade and kind of mark so that I have 6 sections. Now I'm going to want one of them to be a little bit bigger because all of them are going to have a hole in them except for one that's going to be a solid donut. So I'm going to make one chunk just a little bit larger than the rest. Okay, so now I'm going to shape my donuts. So this first one is the piece that I left a little larger. So I'm going to roll that one into a ball. And then I want to kind of smush it and roll it between my hands. And then this will give us that kind of flattened donut look. And my donuts are going to be a little bit on the small side. Like this is not necessarily a mini donut, but it's not really a full-size donut either. So I just like to make things a little bit smaller because I put them on my tiered tray. So you can make them whatever size you want. If you want a mini, you can make a mini. If you want them to be full size, then just make them a little bit bigger than mine. And then for the ones with the holes, we're going to do the same thing, roll into a ball. And then the same shape we just rolled out. Then we're going to poke a hole right in the center. You can do it with your finger or you could do it with a paintbrush or something like that. And then you can pull it open larger if you want to. And for all of these, we're going to put some type of frosting on them, so you don't really have to worry if there are creases or anything like that on the top. They're not going to show anyway. So just do that for all the rest of them. Okay, so for 3 of these, I'm going to paint them like a regular donut color, and then I'm going to do the other 3 chocolate. So since I used classic caramel as my base color, I'm just going to go ahead and use that as my shading color. If you watch my other donut videos, I use a different color that I make myself. So we need to leave a fry line right in the center here on the side. So you just want to be careful when you're shading not to get that. I'm going to get a lot of the paint out of my brush because I want this to be very light on here. And I'm just going to brush this on lightly. So then when we get to the side, just kind of go along the line there. And then you can make sure to leave that line. You might want to do that first all the way around, and then that way you don't accidentally go over it. And this line is basically just when they put the donuts into the fryer in the oil, they float to the top. And so then one side will get brown, and then when they flip them over, then the other side gets brown, but it leaves this kind of lighter color line in the center. So I usually do go over the fry line because see how white it is here? So I get my brush like super dry basically after I've painted the whole rest of the thing. And then I just very, very lightly go over that so that it's not so like stark. For the chocolate donuts, I'm going to use a combination of melted chocolate and burnt umber. I'm going to make my frosting for this a lighter brown. So I want the donut to be a little bit darker brown so that it's a contrast. So that was the burnt umber, and then I'm going to add some melted chocolate here. I'm doing about half and half. And the chocolate ones don't have a fry line, so you can just go to town with your paint on this one. And you'll most likely have to do 2 coats of this chocolate color because you want it to be fully coated, not have these like streaky lines on it. So while I'm waiting to do the second coat on my chocolate donuts, I'm going to go ahead and mix up some frosting for my regular colored donuts. So I'm going to need some orange. So I'm just going to take a cup here and I'm using multi-purpose caulk. This is not silicone, so don't use silicone for this. It's not the same thing. So this one's going to be pumpkin orange. So I'm just going to add some of my paint to this and just add paint until I get the color how I want it. I'm also going to add some gloss Mod Podge to this one. The more Mod Podge you add, the more glossy it's going to be and more liquidy it's going to be. So for this one, I'm going to just put my frosting all across the top of this solid donut. And then I'm going to smooth it out as much as I can. And then I'm going to take one of my other donuts with the hole in the center, and I'm going to just take my orange and make a stripe down the center of it. And again, smooth it as much as you can. And then I'm going to do one more in the orange. I'm going to cover the whole surface of this one. The whole top surface. Now you can choose obviously different colors for these. One of these is going to be a pumpkin, so that one probably needs to be orange or some other pumpkin color. And then this one's going to be candy corn, and the one I'm working on right now is going to be a spider web. So if you wanted, you could do this one with a different color frosting like purple or green or like a chocolate frosting. So now it looks like my chocolate donuts are ready for their second coat. So I'm going to go ahead and get those with the second coat so that I can continue on with those. Okay, so now I'm going to make some yellow frosting, and I only need this for the candy corn one, so I'm not going to put too much there. And then I'm going to add apple barrel yellow to make the color, and then a little of Mod Podge. Now you guys, if you want to wait for these to dry like a day or something before you decorate them, that is totally fine. When I make these videos, each day that I have to let something dry is another day that I have to record. So it makes it really difficult. So I try to reduce the amount of times that I have to dry things just for the sake of being able to record in 1 or 2 days. So, but you know, if you want to take the time to let them dry, it's a lot easier because you can hold on to it without it squishing and stuff like that. So I just wanted to mention that. So smooth this one out too as much as possible. So we need to mix up some white frosting, and this will be for the candy corn, and then we're gonna have a ghost. So even though the caulk is pretty white, I'm gonna add a little bit of white paint to it because the caulk has like a tiny bit of a gray tinge. So I'm just gonna add the white to brighten it up a little. And then of course a little Mod Podge too. So let's go ahead and just finish off our candy corn first. Okay, so now to make the ghost one, I'm just gonna coat half of this top. And then I'm just gonna make it go down about 3/4 of the way. But for the bottom part, we want it to look jaggedy like a ghost. So kind of like drippy. And then again, we want to smooth it out as much as possible, but still leave this drippy, jaggedy part at the bottom. For the next one, I'm going to take a sandwich bag. I like to cut the zipper off if it has a zipper because it gets in my way. And then I'm going to put the rest of my white mixture into the bag. Then I'm just going to take all of this and kind of press it down toward one corner. Now normally when we do this, we cut like the tiniest little tip off, but this I want it to come out a little bit wider, so I'm going to cut a little bit bigger section off here. Still pretty tiny, but this is supposed to look like a mummy, so I want it to have kind of a thicker line. So I'm going to start out, I want to leave like a little space for the eyes. So just make lines going across. And then I'm going to take a little tiny piece of my foam clay and I'm just going to make 2 little eyeballs out of it. So just break it into 2 equal size pieces and roll them into balls. I'm going to take a toothpick and just kind of make a little hole in my clay so I can kind of press them down in there a little bit. And then I'm also going to take just a little bit of my caulk and stick it right inside of that hole, and that'll just help everything stick together. And then I'm just going to take a tiny little brush and some black paint and just put a dot in the eye. You could use a dotting tool for this too to make the circle more perfect. So there's the mummy one. That one's actually finished. Now for the ghost one, I'm going to take some little pieces of clay here, and I'm going to make some little arms that are going to stick out from the side a little bit. So I'm just going to kind of roll them into a little bit of a log, and then we can just stick those right into our caulk to hold them on there. Now the last one we're going to make is going to be a Frankenstein. So I want to mix up some green caulk mixture. So for mine, I'm going to use apple barrel parakeet, and then the Mod Podge, of course. And then for his hair, we're going to do chocolate frosting. We don't need too much of this at all. That's probably actually too much right there. And then I'll use my melted chocolate and a little Mod Podge. So I'll go ahead and just start with his hair first. And you can put this on however you want, you know, shape his hairline how you want to. And then we're going to do green on the rest. And then just smooth it out again. I'm just going to take a little more of my chocolate and go over the hairline a little bit just to kind of make it so it's not like a perfect line. Then I'm going to take another really small piece of my clay and put a little bit of black. I don't want too much. I want this to actually look gray. So I'm just going to put a little bit and see how that looks. If you have a silver, you could use that instead. And then I'm going to use this to make the little knobs coming out of the side of its head. So I think I may have made too much here. So I'm just actually going to use about 1/4 for each side. So I'm just going to roll it into a log, and then I'm going to kind of press and pinch to make that knobby part at the end. And then we'll just stick these right into the caulk mixture. So for everything else that I need to do to this, I need to put like another layer of paint or caulk or something like that. So what I'm going to do is let these dry overnight, and then that'll give me a dry surface, because if I try to put another layer of caulk or paint or something, it's just going to all kind of spread in this wet caulk, and then it's going to look a mess. So I'm going to let these dry, and then we'll come back and finish up the ones that aren't finished. Okay, so let's finish up our donuts here. For the details, I'm going to use this 3D fabric paint. So I just have a really tiny little brush here that I'm going to use to make all the details. So for the Frankenstein, I'm going to give him a cute little face. And then I also want to make some little I guess like sewn spots or whatever. And then that's all for him. And then for the ghost, we just need a little face. And then that's all for the ghost. And then for this one, we're going to do a spider web. So to do that, I'm just going to make lines going from the outside of the frosting to the inside. I'm trying to make them as evenly spaced as possible. And then what we're going to do is just connect these outer parts of the lines with like a swooped line. And then we're going to go about halfway down and do the same thing. So I got these tiny little spiders last year at Walmart. There's like this big bag for, I think it was 98 cents or something like that. So I was thinking it would be cute to put one of these on the spider web one. So I'm just going to use some super glue to do that. And then the last one we have to do is this one, which is going to be a jack-o'-lantern. So for the details on the jack-o'-lantern, I'm going to use some lightweight spackling. So I'm going to use my parakeet again for the green. I'm going to use the pumpkin orange again for this. Now, I want this to turn out a little bit lighter than the actual frosting color, so I'm not going to go too heavy with the paint. So before I do my spackling, I'm going to put a face on for the jack-o'-lantern. So again, I'm just using my 3D fabric paint and a paintbrush. Okay, so for my orange spackling, I have a piping bag here, and I have a very small piping tip. I'm going to put my piping tip inside of my bag, and then I'm just going to make a mark with my scissors where I want to cut. Just cut that tip right off, and then the piping tip should slide right in there and stay secure. And then I'm just going to load my orange spackle into my piping bag. And then what I'm going to do is just make a line right here and right here. And then for the green, so I have this tip right here, and it's like a kind of flat, skinny, and then it has these little indents here, and this is good for making leaves. I'm not the greatest piper in the world, so you'll have to bear with me. I usually try to do a little sample on my paper just to like get a feel for it before I put it on my project. So I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the other tip, and then just load your spackling into the bag. So I'm going to do a little practice here. So I think you hold it with the widest part side to side, and then see, it just makes a leaf. So I'm going to do that at the top here. And then we can also make a little stem. So there are all of the Halloween donuts. I hope you've enjoyed the tutorial, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much.